Hi, everyone. I hope all of you can hear me properly. My name is Joanne. I am the communications coordinator for ASSEK. Hope you can see me properly now. So my name is Joanne. I'm the communications coordinator for ASSEK. We'll begin in about 3 minutes. Just give a few people some time to join because technical difficulties and all. But feel free to introduce yourself so that we're able to just know where the organization that you come from, what position you hold, so that the meeting can be more productive. Hi, Esther. Thank you for sharing. Hi, Eric. Thank you for sharing. We're glad to have eRehab part of this info session. I think now we can begin. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes, we can.
So we can begin. Good. So since we are the hosts, my name, like I said, my name is Joanne Masinde. I work for Association of Startup and SME Enablers of Kenya, and we are a membership-based association that brings together and represents interests of entrepreneur support organizations who provide key enterprise services to Kenyan startups and SMEs just to scale their growth and impact. We have 5 pillars that we work under. On our first pillar is the policy pillar, where we drive policy and agenda for our members with the government, development partners, and investors to develop vigorous ecosystem standards and guidelines that can actually work and benefit the ecosystem. Our second pillar is collaboration, where we ease the sharing of information and knowledge, best practices between our members, and forge collaboration with different stakeholders within the country, region, and globally as well. We also have a pillar under internationalization, where we actively promote and position the Kenyan entrepreneurial ecosystem internationally to just increase visibility and discoverability for the support and investment for global corporates, global organizations, and global investors. Our fourth pillar is the capacity building pillar, where we facilitate professional and personal development for our members to strengthen their services to startups and SMEs within the country. We also have our fifth pillar, which is our last pillar of empowerment, where we actively facilitate economic opportunities for collaborations and partnerships that benefit our members. So our membership database has about over 55 Kenyan innovation hubs, accelerators, and also co-working spaces that facilitate the growth and scale up of different sectors of startups and SMEs. They range from different cities of the country, but most of them are in Nairobi, our capital city. We also have different partners who are both government and non-government, and also some are local, some are regional, and some are international. These are just some of the members and partners that we have under our association. So far, since 2017, we have had over 800 participants reached through the diverse engagement initiatives that we usually have. We have over 55 ESOs supported through our mandate and our pillars. Thus far, we have had 5 innovation and impact projects. Also, we have initiated 5 ecosystem dialogues, and 2 policy initiatives. Then so far, 269 entrepreneurial projects have been enrolled through our efforts and partners, and also different investors, and 116 projects that have been funded, and 15 members have been profiled internationally, regionally, and also locally. In terms of funding, we have been able to facilitate for 145,000 euros, more than 145,000 euros that has been channeled to different entrepreneurs in different sectors. And also we have been able to generate over 50,000 euros to our members for diverse initiatives. For this session, one that falls under internationalization, we have partnered with Agorize, who are a leading opportunity channel platform that through their Slingshot 2022, they have been able to reach out to us, and we're able to disseminate this information to our members and also to the entrepreneurial ecosystem, so that they're able to just understand what Agorize is and how they can benefit from Agorize and the Slingshot 2022. I'll introduce Hanae, who's the partnerships coordinator for Agorize.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the introduction. Hello everyone. My name is Hanae. I'm very happy to be invited to speak here. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm just gonna share my screen. So just as a quick introduction of myself.
Hi, Hanae. Can you hear us? We can't hear you.
Hanai, sorry, we can't hear you.
Or I cannot hear her. I think we're missing her somewhere.
It could just be the sound output. Yeah.
Maybe
Should I say something?
right now.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah.
Maybe you can start again.
Okay. From where did you not hear?
Yeah,
So
just start again. Yeah.
I was just explaining Agorize. So Agorize, we're an open innovation SaaS platform where we link a community of innovators with large organizations, corporations, through open innovation challenges. So basically, the companies come to us and we host their innovation challenges that are destined to for startups, mainly startups, but also students. And it gives different opportunities for them to win prizes and have different, so win prizes, win POC opportunities, investments, but also networking and different sort of prizes, invitation to a huge event with experts and leading industry people. Let me try.
Hanai, sorry, you're mute. Yeah. Hanai, sorry, we can't seem to hear you. Should we try sharing the screen on our end? Maybe that can help with the audio.
Maybe. Okay. Let's try like this. You can hear me now, I guess. So all our challenges are open to all startups, all kind of startups. So they can be from pre-seed to mature, and they're based basically on a variety of topics depending on the challenge itself. So it can be organized by different companies, such as telecommunication companies, but also food companies or just cosmetic companies like L'Oréal, for example. And those companies are looking for collaboration with startups. And so they want either to collaborate or help accelerate some of the solutions that the startups have, or simply funding and network. And so every single challenge is very different. So this is a timeline, a standard timeline of the challenges that we have. So as I said, they're very different from one challenge to another. But this is how basically it organizes. So the first step is the ideation. So basically, the startups, they register on the platform. They can submit a startup deck, so solutions deck, a deck that the startup would basically use to apply for funding, for example, or to apply for an acceleration program, an incubation program. So it's very basic. There's not much work to do. And it has to be linked to the challenges topic, of course, but as we will see later, it's the topics are very broad sometimes. Then there's a selection phase. So for a few weeks, the company hosting the challenge will select a few startups, so the most successful ones. Again, depending on the challenge, it really depends on the width of the challenge, because and the objective, because sometimes we have thousands of startups, sometimes we only have a few dozens, so it really depends. And then the selected ones, they will go through a mentoring stage sometimes, led by the company, and which will lead them to submit another deck more developed in a sense, and another selection will take place. This again varies across different challenges. And then the successful startups towards the end, they will be invited to pitch their solutions in front of a jury of industry leaders, depending on management of the company, or this would be very much different again on the company. So why would startup? I mean, it's pretty much clear now, I think, but I mean, what are the benefits for applicants, for startups to apply, to submit their proposal? So first of all, is to gain visibility and to have the opportunity to get spotted by corporates and key innovation stakeholders that would be present and would attend basically either the mentoring session or the final event. And network. So this would lead the candidates to network and pitch to industry leaders and have a chance to jumpstart their projects, because as we know, networking is the key for all of that. And it's accessible to everybody. And finally, to win prizes, as I said, to get the opportunity to test and implement the projects, your projects, with a global company. Now, why do company host challenges? As I said before, it's to collaborate with new solutions, but it's more than that. It's to gain exposure and monitor the latest innovation in tech and the latest solutions on the market. They also crowdsource qualitative sources, the most quality startups for their collaboration. And in doing so, they accelerate the time to market and they recover from technological debt. So now I'm just gonna do a quick overview of our current challenges. So the first one is the main one. So it's the kind of the aim of this session. So it's Slingshot. Slingshot is the biggest deep tech competition in Asia, basically, but it's global. So everybody in any region of the world can apply, and it gives the opportunity to really expand elsewhere in the world, and here for Singapore. Slingshot is organized by the Singaporean government. It's basically the Ministry of the Economy of Singapore that organizes this. So it's called Enterprise Singapore. This is the entity, and there are clients. So we work for them to give you this information, and so it's part of the largest deep tech week and startup week for deep tech in Singapore, and it will take place in October. So it's very, very general. Deep tech is, as you know, a very, very general topic. You can see the 5 different categories on the screen here. You can also scan the QR code and access the platform, or just have the link. You can put the link in the chat as well. And so basically, it's a huge opportunity for you, because there's a pool of 1.2 million of Singapore dollars to win, and also an opportunity for the top, if you get to the top 50 startups, to win a sponsorship to expand to Singapore. So get an entry pass, which is a working visa, to get expanded there. So looking for pretty early stage startups, pre-seed and seed stage startups, but all of startups are welcome to apply. So you get to win also a complimentary exhibition booth to Switch. So Switch is the week of deep tech in Singapore. And so the top 50 startups get to showcase their solutions at Switch. So it's huge because it's the place to be for deep tech. Everybody's going to be there. Main key stakeholders will be there, and you'll be able to network. I mean, a lot. So it's a huge opportunity. And also, so every step you go, if you get to the top 250 and then to the top 50, you accumulate basically the different prizes. So if you get to the top 50, you'll also get the invitation to the Slingshot corporate deal mixer. So if you get to the top 3 startups, you'll get the whole package, basically the whole all the prizes in the box will, I mean, will be yours basically. So it's absolutely huge, and so you're welcome to apply. The deadline is actually pretty soon, so I encourage you to apply. It's super simple. As I said, it's only a deck to submit on the platform, and so it's not much effort. Another challenge that I wanted to talk to you about is pretty linked because they're a partner of Slingshot. It's an additional opportunity to get into the top 50 of Slingshot, actually, but it's another competition. It's hosted by Huawei, and with different categories, but also based on, I mean, with a deep tech perspective, so enterprise software, fintech, media and gaming, metaverse, mobile apps, and sustainability. If you get selected, you can access also various incubation programs of Huawei, and also the grand prizes. So 40K of US dollars grand prizes, for example. Again, feel free to have the QR code, and I can put the link into the chat as well. And finally, I wanted to talk to you about a third challenge, which is hosted by Seagate. So Seagate is a data company. So this challenge is pretty much very much data-based. It's how does your startup have a solution to harness the power of data? I mean, if you have a solution based on data, you should definitely apply. And again, it gives you the opportunity to get a fast track to the top 50 of Slingshot again, because they're a partner of Slingshots. And you get to attend the grand final and also win a trip to the US. So yeah, different prizes. It's quite little things, but I mean, feel free to apply. Also, what I didn't say is that you can apply to the 3 of them. And I mean, you can get as much chance as you can on those different on getting fast track to Slingshots and have those different opportunities. So you can apply to all 3 of them. It's no problem, as long as your solution is a deep tech solution. You'll get the opportunity to access all of that. This is a quick part on how to register and participate. Once you go on each platform, you can create a profile on each one of them, and you will receive a confirmation email as you do when you create an account on any platform, actually. And you click on the confirmation link in your inbox, and you get redirected to the challenge. And then you'll have your participation space where you can simply submit your deck and do so before the challenge's deadline, of course. So yeah, I think that's it for me. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. You can also put them in the chat. So I have access to the chat now.
Hello, this is Eric, founder and CEO at Circularity. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, very well.
My question is, other than the three you've just told us about, are there other opportunities that will be coming after the deadline of these three have passed?
Yes, definitely. Very good question. We have challenges throughout the year. And I mean, I'm sure we can keep, doing that kind of sessions with ASSEK actually to let you know about those different opportunities. So you'll get to know them along the way when we have them. Does that
Awesome.
answer your question?
Thank you. Yes, it does.
Cool.
So if no one else has a question, I think we can move on to the next segment. Thank you so much, Hanai, for the presentation.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to the next segment. Are you able to stop sharing your screen so that I'm able to introduce the speaker?
Yes. All right.
Perfect. Great. Just a minute. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Good. So our next speaker, sorry, just a minute. Oops, sorry. So our next speaker is actually Antony Kimani. He has over 9 years experience in finance and investment, and he's a charter holder of the Certified Financial Institute. Currently he's working as an investment service manager at E4 Impact Accelerator. I don't know if he's on the call.
Yes, I am, Joan.
Great. Hi,
Yeah.
Antony.
Good. How are you?
I'm good. So he's going to take us through just how to create a pitch deck that is standardized to global standards, not just Kenyan standards, but global standards, so that we're able to actually take this prize home, especially for the Slingshot 2022, and also to be relevant with the global ecosystem.
Good. Thank you, John. I guess it's appropriate for me to make a slight correction. So I'm not yet a charter holder. That could land me in trouble if I.
My apologies, but I'm ambitious for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So hopefully sometime in the next not so many months. But yeah. So is it my turn?
Yes, it is. You can take over.
Good. All right. Thank you. So I think, like John has mentioned, my name is Antony. I think I was told I have 28 minutes to try and more or less have an introductory discussion on fundraising and specifically pitching for tech enterprises. So technology is very diverse. So what I'll attempt to do is just to run you through very basic sort of rules or just very basic content of what is often expected of us whenever we are pitching. Just a moment, I'm going to share my screen. Yeah, so much of it is, so I think for most of you on the call, it's probably not the first time you're probably pitching or putting together a pitch deck. So a lot of this content is not necessarily new. What I'm attempting to do here is to just clarify how, what exactly we try to communicate anytime we are putting a pitch in front of an investor. And this has a lot more bias on technology opportunities. So the first bit I would want to start with, just a moment as I move this. Let me know if you can see my screen.
We can see your screen.
Moment. Yeah. So the first bit is just trying to highlight about the problem. So what exactly are we looking for whenever we're trying to define a problem? And I'm sure, again, the idea here is not to teach you how to write a problem statement, but to just sort of help you think through what exactly, an investor would be looking for, or yourself help maybe being an ESO trying to assist a tech enterprise raise funds. So we are basically looking for four things. One is identifying what problem the technology solution or the enterprise is solving. And then second is how unique, the uniqueness or the innovativeness of the solution. And number three, for whom is the solution being built, or how for whom are you solving the problem? So I think the challenge here is not so much identifying these three areas, it's how the information is presented. So it's not very, it's one thing to say this is a solution we're building, but having that clarity as to what problem you're solving. Sometimes you find enterprises that the problem is almost apparent, but they're not able to articulate it very well. Sometimes you find an enterprise, or getting lost in, maybe if you're probably trying to solve a very large problem. So that is exactly what we try to find clarity on this particular slide. And an easy way or a quick hack of thinking this through is we use what we call a formula called the 4 U's. So if you want to know how how accurate or how sharp your problem statement is, I think it should bring out some aspects. So first of all, is the problem you're describing unworkable, or is it unavoidable, or is it urgent, or is it underserved? So it's a whole different conversation, for us to run through all those 4 areas. But I think in the interest of time, I would leave it at that, just to try and think through whatever problem you're describing. Is it unworkable? Is it unavoidable? A lot of regulatory driven, or a lot of problems that are driven by regulation actually fall under that category. And then third, is it urgent? Issues to do with climate change. Sometimes in some industries, some of those problems could be described as urgent. For instance, if you're thinking of a situation where we have a shortage of microchips, and something has to be done, whole entire industries are falling behind, and so on. And then the most common one, especially in Africa, is an underserved category. So it's one thing to describe it, it's another to correctly identify that. So I'll leave it at that for now, just so that then we can move on to the next. And then in terms of the solution, so what we'll be looking for here is how do you create, or how do you describe a winning value proposition? So we are looking to answer 3 things. One is, how does that solution address the pain or the need? And then second, does it demonstrate some of these characteristics that we are going to be defining, quite simply? So in terms of addressing the pain and need, I think that should be straightforward. So this should actually be a solution that is very well tailored for that particular need. And then in terms of what characteristics you're looking for in the solution, is we always advise entrepreneurs sometimes to follow a systematic process where you define the problem, or the definition phase, where you can use different frameworks to identify the problem, build, throw around some good ideas, and then eventually end up with the solution. So that would comprise the defining phase. And then you have the evaluation phase, which is a small but very critical part. So now that you've come up with a solution, most solutions are correctly identified, they could work, but then they have so many, they still haven't gotten through the gains and pains point of view. So these are situations where you end up with a very good solution, but not very many people can afford, or at least the people who eventually the problem we are hoping to solve a problem for cannot necessarily access that solution in the way that they actually should. So that is a small phase we call evaluation phase. And then finally, now we go into the building phase. So now that we've identified a problem or at least a solution, we've addressed, or at least have an idea of how we're going to move through the gains and pains. So what exactly are we building? How do we tell whether we are building a strong value proposition or not? And a quick way again of thinking through those things is, I think it helps to ask yourself whether whatever innovation you have, is it, discontinuous? Is it something that, is hard to replicate for someone who's probably just looking to copy what you're doing? And then second, is it a defensible technology? A lot of us, use a lot of open source software, and there's nothing wrong with that. But then you want to get to a point where you ask yourself, what part of that journey of building that product is actually defensible? So there could be very many ways. Some of them we'll touch on in the next few slides on how you can build or how to think about defensibility and so on. And then third, which is another weak, I would say a blind spot for most tech entrepreneurs, is you have a very good technology, that works very well. You've identified a problem for sure, but then you still have to think through the business model. So sometimes you have a good technology, the business model is very weak. So now, that ends up being a whole different set of problems on their own. So I think the best thing is if you can actually achieve these three things, I think, then you have a winning proposition. So, other than identifying the problem, evaluating it, and then, does it lead you to a point where you can actually build a strong value proposition based on what we're calling the 3Ds. Then after that, so we have the next bit, which is the market opportunity. So in terms of the market opportunity, again, most of you know what it's about. So what I'm trying to achieve here is, just to sharpen how we present this. And usually the rule of thumb here is always try, where possible, go for both context and content. A lot of investors, especially in tech, probably know about the technology better than you, especially if they're coming from a more developed background, or a more developed economy. So the issue is not to try to sell or, to educate them about the technology, but how this slide adds value is if you actually give them better context of how that technology can be useful, say in the African setting. So you're looking to correctly identify or describe specific business pains, and then define the technology need. And after you've done that, I think it also helps to have or to highlight the urgency or the timeliness of that technology solution. So some of them could be futuristic, fair enough. You get to a point where maybe the customers you're targeting are probably not there yet, or they're not at a point where that technology may be relevant for them. You find in some cases there are more cheaper ways of addressing the same need, or more cost-effective ways of addressing the same need, or more low-tech solutions to the same need that you're trying to address. So again, you have to evaluate the timeliness of your tech solution. So I would say, just to wrap up, if you're looking to describe your market opportunity, go for context and content. Then from there, just a second. Then the other issue we often come across is in terms of market sizing. We're looking for, the question we get more often is there a correct way of doing it? I wish I could tell you yes and no, but that doesn't help. So I'll try to put it in probably a way that most entrepreneurs present it. So first is we have a top-down approach. So here is where, someone quotes, I don't know, a report from a certain research organization, or probably, a large consulting firm and so on. So usually, or some known statistics that have been published, maybe by the government or by any other public source. So those would comprise a top-down approach. So this we find a lot. It's perhaps the most common in most presentations that I've come across in this ecosystem. Then and they're usually affordable. So the information is probably, everywhere. So you only just need a desktop, research, and you have all this data and information. So what happens is this information has its place, because then it's more useful when you're describing your total available market. So if you're using those statistics, it's important to know where exactly do they fit in, in your presentation. So if you're looking to describe your total available market, a top-down approach is perhaps very useful. The other one is the bottom-up approach. So the bottom-up approach is, you basically start from what you know and trying to extrapolate that into what you feel, or the size of business you feel you can generate from that particular market. So then the bottom-up approach then gives you what in most cases is defined as the total addressable market. So even if in most cases you find these two terms on the same slide, chances are, or at least the best practice would be, that you apply two different approaches to computing those. So you don't just take a fraction of your total available market and say 30% of the TAM is, or the available market is what we are going for. So then you arrive at a figure. So there's actually this some structured way of going through that process. Then the other thing is a little known method that is perhaps very, very effective and very, very trustworthy. And this is based on your previous sales. So what I mean by this is, if you're if you're presenting or you're doing your market sizing, and your business has had some previous experiences, maybe you've had initial traction, you've had a bit of a bit of sales or pre-sales. Now, those are probably a very powerful way of, they're a very strong basis for extrapolating your market size. So what I mean by that is, let's say, I want to come up with a new solution that's selling, I don't know, medical insurance to low-income consumers and so on. So what I'm looking to do is, I've set up the company, I've gone out there, maybe made a few sales. They may not be as many, but I'm beginning to see some trends, some consistencies in terms of the customer profiles that I'm going for, and getting that initial feedback. So if you're then able to extrapolate your market size on that basis, that perhaps puts you in a very, very strong position whenever you're presenting or you're having this discussion with a potential investor. The other thing is, now, once that is done, it is always important that you don't just leave the figures on their own. You also highlight with a bit of accuracy the growth drivers. So I guess now that's why that's probably where approach number 3 comes in very handy, because it doesn't just give you the numbers. It doesn't give you the projections. It also gives you the insights into what exactly is driving your sales. So whenever you're looking to have a market sizing slide, consider those 3 approaches. And then number 4, where possible, identify with a bit of accuracy the growth drivers. Some of them may not be as straightforward as maybe Googling and coming up with them. You may have to have be very intentional about sitting down and discussing that with your team, and probably conducting some additional research. Then the other slide that's very important is the team. So everyone, this is usually a colorful slide, but what I'm attempting to communicate here is, what exactly an investor would be looking for in this slide. So other than the nice pictures and the very strong and powerful profiles of probably your founders, your advisors, or your senior management, or your board, there are certain, other questions that probably would be best answered in this slide. So number 1 is, what led them to this opportunity? So it's one thing to say we have all these, very influential people, or people with a very good track record in this sector, but what exactly led them to that opportunity? So that is a question that answering that gives a lot of confidence to whoever you're presenting the pitch deck to. And then second is, how are they uniquely advantaged to build this business? So we've seen cases where your team is comprised of PhDs or MBAs, but no one in that particular technical field, that you're hoping to then begin to address. Or sometimes you find, a team is lacking in a certain competence that is very, very vital to the area that they're operating in. So some of those things, need to come out. So you're looking to highlight the unique advantages that that team brings to the table. And then the other thing is maybe how they know each other, how they previously interacted. So you'd want to highlight, past achievements, either of the management or of the team, individually or collectively, and not just highlighting their past achievements, but they have to be achievements that are relevant to the opportunity that you're trying to present. So not just, if I sat my exam somewhere or I won an award somewhere when I was still a student, it also has to be relevant to the opportunity that I'm probably presenting. Then from there, the other slide that it's not often used, but from time to time it does come up is when you're trying to communicate the vision. So we write all sorts of things, and usually one of the mistakes we see here is most of us describe this as in metaphors. So I want to be the Uber for X industry, or I want to be the Airbnb of Y industry, and so on. So that's not necessarily the correct way of looking at it. So what you want to highlight here is, how will the market evolve, or to what extent are you aware of how the market, is likely to evolve? How will you lead it, either through your technology or through whatever solution you're offering, and then what exactly is your mission? So, other than building the enterprise, so what do you aim to achieve once this is all done? Then the other bit, or the other slide that is common is whenever you're trying to describe the business model. So again, this is a simple way of how you're creating, delivering, and capturing value. So that's probably not where the news is at. But the more important area is, other than just presenting the business model, it has to have some consistency with what you're describing as your customer interest. So sometimes you find a very well-developed business model, but when you think of the market or the customer profile that has just been presented a few slides before, there's a bit of inconsistency. So you want to check for that. Again, business models can be created, so they are not cast in stone. So feel free, or I would actually encourage that you probably take time to design a business model that actually serves a customer that you've identified, or the person for whom you're solving the problem. And then the other question is that, does the business model encourage partnerships or network effects? Usually, especially at this phase, growth is perhaps very important. So you do not want to be, or put yourself in a position where your business model is sustainable, but it means you have to shed, where you have to shed 30% of your customer base. Or sometimes when you get to positions where you have customers, and you probably have to scale down your customer segment, since simply because only a few of them can afford your product or service. So those are some examples of what exactly needs to or additional things that we probably need to consider when describing the business model. Then from there, another common opportunity we see is when you're talking about when we're trying to describe the go-to-market strategy. So this is where everything comes together. So sometimes you're not sure whether that is describing the marketing plan or the sales plan or both, or or what exactly is going on there. So the quick hacks about, or quick pointers to think through the go-to-market strategy would include, so number one, if possible, consider the marketing plan. Here we're talking about market segmentation, targeting, and so on. So that would be one small assignment within this. And then the other small assignment would be, think through your sales plan. Are you going to rely on pre-sales? Is there a referral system? Is there a sales process that needs to be factored in? What is your distribution channel, and so on. So once those two once you have a good idea of those two, the third thing you want is put them side by side and then check, for consistency of that combined plan with your business model. So usually when investors are evaluating your go-to-market strategy is, you find mistakes where the marketing plan is super, but it's so detached. It's not very consistent with the sales plan, or it does not fit the mold that you've described in your business model. Sometimes, you end up with a very expensive go-to-market strategy, but you don't have the resources to sustain it. So to avoid that, those 3 pointers, in my view, get the job done. The other bit is on competition. So again, identifying competition is never a problem, but what is usually left out, what would be more useful or insightful in this slide is identifying the technology's unique differentiation. So sometimes let's not, we always assume that everyone knows, this is a new technology. It may be new in the market, but not necessarily new in a different market where a very established, a very well-established player might just move markets, get into your market, and before you know it, you have a problem, or a competition problem in your hands. Then the other thing is, I think it's also important to highlight the barriers to entry. Sometimes these barriers to entry go beyond the technology solution that we are proposing. So if that is the case, then it's important to have that highlighted in this slide, and that often happens with technology companies. So you begin, you have the first mover advantage, move on, build your business. A challenger comes along, and all of a sudden now, they probably even have better technology than you, and you're kind of trying to play catch up. So you want to highlight both the technological edge and the non-tech edge that you may have. Those would mean, and then once you've identified that, not all those advantages will give you that sustainability in the long term. So you also want to think through and say, fine, so this is my competitive edge, but is it sustainable in the long run? Sometimes businesses or enterprises may have to change the entire business model for them to be sustainable in the long run. So those things, I think, are some of the examples that need to come out, or some of the ideas that need to be communicated on this competition slide. And then last but not least, financials. So this could have been a very long discussion, but just to keep it in one slide, again, being aware that tech companies are not a monolith, so they come from different, focusing on different needs, different sectors, different approaches, different core technologies, and so on, and different pricing models. So I think I try to more or less put everything on one slide, but I think three things for me stand out whenever we are describing financials. One is your assumptions. So whatever assumptions you're having, verify that those assumptions hold true, because this is not a very good area for an investor to be challenging you. You own the business, you've prepared for this presentation, so it helps that you've done your homework. You know how much it's going to cost, what volumes are realistic, and so on. So I think for most entrepreneurs, this is not an area where you want to allow investors to keep having back and forth. Yes, they will have questions, definitely, but let those questions be just by the fact that you need to communicate that whatever information, but not necessarily because you've not done your homework in terms of identifying your key assumptions and verifying those assumptions. And this is actually where most, if you're actually at seed stage or trying to, or you're even pre-revenue, I would actually, advise that you approach this bit with a lot of caution. Try to be as conservative as you can until your strategy has hit the ground. You've interacted with a few customers, collected initial feedback, and so on. So the other thing is be very smart about milestones. Sometimes, or in most cases, funding is dependent on the milestones that you want to achieve, and and some timelines. So be very smart about it. Don't overpromise. Be realistic, and be very, identify suitable timelines. Sometimes you could have a good, a tech business, but it's probably moving or growing too slowly at the beginning. Then you probably need to have a good explanation to that. Sometimes it could be growing too fast because if you have enough money, you can burn through some funds and so on. So I think it helps to be very realistic about milestones. An example of this is what we are seeing now. So fine, an enterprise could raise money, but you're not guaranteed that within the runway that you've projected, additional funding is going to come in. So what would then be your plan B? Do you slow down the growth rate of the business? Do you delay or do you revise your hiring plans? Or do you push for break even much faster? So all those things, are options that you could consider. So you have to be very smart about how you approach that. Then finally, we advocate that you identify, analyze, and understand financial metrics, and not just the financial metrics, but the story behind them. So different enterprises have different ways they assess, whether it's sales metrics, whether it's growth metrics, whether it's, profitability and so on. So identify them, analyze them, and understand them. One of the biggest challenges we have is, your numbers are saying this, but you're trying to sell that, so you need to be very consistent. I always say, if you're not sure which way to go, trust the numbers. So if the numbers are not looking good, it's, try to think through what could be the potential causes and what could be done better, or what could be revised. So I would want to stop there in the interest of time. So thank you very much. And I try to make it as simple as possible, and to just highlight some common, some ground rules on pitching, not so much going into the nitty-gritty. A lot of those are dependent on the context of the tech enterprise that is fundraising. So thank you so much, John. I'm happy to take some questions, and hand it back to you. I think you're still muted.
Hi, Anthony. Can you
Yes.
can you guys hear me?
We can hear you. We can see you.
Great. Thank you so much for taking us through pitch deck and what exactly investors look for. It has been a very interesting session for me, especially when you mentioned that people like putting that they are the Ubers of a specific industry and they're the next Airbnbs. So thank you so much. If there are any questions, you can just put them on the chat, or you can just ask directly.
Hi, Anthony. My question is, name 10 must-have slides on your pitch deck.
Sorry, 10.
Yeah.
If you go by the 10 that I have, actually my presentation today was on 10 slides. I did my best to not have. Yes. So if we use that as a yardstick, you have 10, and I've actually condensed the bit on financials. I've also left out intentionally the bit on product. Sometimes tech products need a bit more, a slide or two to exhaust what exactly, what are the features, how exactly does it solve the problem, and so on, and a bit of technical discussion. So at the very least, given, if I share this presentation, you're guaranteed to land at 10, if that helps. Yeah, but I've left out some of those that I've mentioned, products, features, and benefits. So sometimes if you want to highlight customer endorsements and so on, and a bit more information around the financials, your ask and so on. So yes.
Will you be sharing these slides?
I think that's up to John, but I assume so. Yeah.
Yes,
All right,
we'll share the
thank you.
slide and the recording as well.
Okay, yes.
Hello, Anthony.
Good. Hi, Brian. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Now, let me throw in a question or two. Now, on the slide of market sizing, now in the
Yes.
absence of reliable data and traction, which is the best way to go? Secondly,
Yeah.
now on the market sizing slide and the financials,
Yeah.
now how do they relate? Does that mean when you get the market sizing wrong, then you'll have the financials wrong as well? Because I want to think that they are related in a way, because if you get the market sizing wrong, maybe you will get the numbers wrong at the end. So do you start to fail from the very beginning?
Actually, you're right. Yes. So maybe to answer your first question, what happens in the absence of data, which is a common thing? You'd have to do the longer route. The longer route would be pilot the business, learn a lot very fast, and then be able to have a bit generate your own basis for making projections. It's something I have personally done. So and sometimes even for very serious pitches, I'm not saying there are pitches that are not serious, but when discussions are getting a bit more serious, when you're talking about Series A and so on, there are times when we've actually had to do all three. So and let's even assume maybe the enterprise has a bit of resources, probably did their own seed fund. So there are times when we actually have had to do all three. So you have very well researched, or sold or bought research that could be bought from all these large research firms and consulting organizations. So that's one. And then now the bottom-up approach, which is now actually looking through the potential area where you want to begin selling your product and profiling the specific people who fit the customer segment that you feel you'd be comfortable with. And then third, we've actually had to now base it on initial sales of the enterprise. So you kind of triangulate around those three to arrive at I would say what I would consider a defensible position in terms of finding your market sizing. Yeah, so in the event where none of that works, which is very unlikely, or you don't have all the resources and time to do that, I think maybe very experienced fundraisers would perhaps be able to use an adjacent industry that more or less behaves in the same manner, and could be indicative or could mirror the kind of activity we are likely to see in that space. But that's I wouldn't advise that. If you're in a position to put in the work, that is that happens a lot with very large enterprises. So you're looking to sell a totally new product, then you'd probably be looking at an industry like, I'm just giving an example. So we'd be looking at what is the average, power bill per household in Nairobi and so on, even if, that is to give you the idea of, say, a household device that you're trying to sell to the market. So, it gives you an idea of, let's say, if I'm sort of, assembling toasters and so on, and I want to sell to the mass market, then I'll probably know, what level of power consumption, that is likely to be suitable for that market and so on. So that's just an extreme way of looking at it, but there's always, in most cases, there will be a way out. The other question was on, yes, I think your market sizing and your financials, without a doubt, they have to be consistent. They have to speak to each other. I think needless to say, your projections should not outsize the size of market or the size of the available or even addressable market, depending on the stage you are in. So yes, that is true. The two have to speak to each other. Same as, you know, when I mentioned the go-to-market plan, you have all these nice plans. You've hired a consultant to, you know, help you through it. You've probably studied a few cases of how similar enterprises have scaled. That's all good, but then at the end of the day, then it has to, you know, that and your sales plan and your business model have to converge, you know, for it to sound realistic. I hope I answered that
thank
question.
you, thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Are there any other questions before we end the session? Good. If there are none, then there's a question on the comment section that says, from Stephen, that says, can we get personal support concerning the startup funding application? Is it possible, Antony?
Is it for myself or for you? Yeah, well, I think, all right, let me quickly just you know, leave you my contacts on the chat. Even though I am obviously you know, a member of you know, ASSEK, so we're in the same house. But yeah, if it helps, then, you know, there is my contact. Yeah, so feel free to shoot me an email. Yeah, I don't know, maybe. So there you go, my phone number. All right, yeah.
Great.
But we can obviously have a chat. Joan will share this, you know, at the end of today's session. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Antony. I really want to appreciate. Hanai, do you have anything to mention regarding Agorize and the Slingshot prize?
No, I might put my email as well in the chat.
Yes. Yes.
Just in case, but feel free to, when you sign up, you have a help button where somebody from our team will take care of your question in any case. So feel free to create an account and you'll see on it. And yeah, we look forward to having your application.
Great. Thank you so much, Antony, and thank you so much, Hanai. I want to recognize E4 Impact Accelerator and also Agorize. Thank you for making this session interactive, and thank you everybody for attending and creating the time. I'd like to close the session by informing all of you that I will send the slides that have been presented and the information that they have shared on the chat box. With that, have a great afternoon.
Yeah, hopefully we can have some powerful pitches to Agorize.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.